Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast with Jackson and Kyle. I am Jackson, and I'm joined here, as always, by the man who has been looking up every single update about the Patriots offensive coordinator situation, hoping for a new offensive coordinator. Kyle, how are you doing?
I am doing great. We interviewed our tight ends coach today, so that's exciting. We'll see how it
Hey,
goes.
at least he's an offensive guy.
Yeah, at least he, coached that side of the ball before this season, so that helps.
Yeah, that at least you're moving in the right direction.
Yeah. How are you doing, man? How's it going?
I'm
How are you recovered from the loss?
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm fine. Definitely, it was sad, but at the same time, kind of what I said in the podcast. It felt like if we won, we'd win the right to lose to the 49ers anyways. The Cowboys, I think, have a chance. I think the NFL, always right in the NFL world. Listen, losses happen, right? You can't get to, if you're going to be upset every time your team doesn't win a Super Bowl, you're going to be upset a lot in watching sports.
Yeah. That is true. That is true.
Mm-hmm.
But you ultimately do want the championship, which we still have 8 teams left that have a chance to win that championship. This should be a very exciting week. There's a few of these games I legitimately don't know.
Yeah, there's 2 of these games I could see going either way. I feel okay about picking 2 of these. I think we kind of know which ones those are. The 1 seeds are favored in this one by a significant margin, by over 7 points, but we have a couple games that are very close, and I think maybe even one of the games the line should be closer.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And I mean, it'll be interesting. I don't know. I think one of those 1 seats could be on upset alert.
Yeah, again, anything could happen. These are 8 good teams. You don't get here by being a bad team. Maybe might be one team that you could argue the contrary.
Yeah, definitely a favorable matchup, that's for sure. So it's going to be fascinating to see. I think there's interesting matchups this weekend to look at, and yeah, you want to get into it?
Yeah, let's get into it. Just, again, thanks to everyone for tuning in at an unusual hour and working with us on our ever-changing schedules. We appreciate all that. Everyone in the chat. Or if you're watching after the fact, hey, it's just as fun after the fact, I think. Let's get into it, Kyle. I want to start off with, let's start off with Bengals Bills. I think this one is getting billed, no pun intended, as the matchup of the week. And I totally get it, right? I mean, you're talking about 2 teams that we felt like were Super Bowl contenders from the start of this season, have lived up to the hype this year for the most part, and are now here competing for a spot to probably, we would assume, go on and take on Kansas City. And we'll know, it wouldn't necessarily be in Kansas City if Buffalo wins, but to play Kansas City, and we'll know by the time of this game who they will be playing. The hype around this game is definitely real.
Yeah, especially when you think back to Week 17. Obviously, this game didn't happen, and that was probably obviously there good reason to cancel the game, obviously, and void the game, but that was probably the most hyped game of the regular season at that point too. All of the playoff implications that were at stake during that game, all the stuff. I mean, 2 of the probably the best 4 teams if you were to power rank teams, 5 teams in the NFL if you were to power rank teams. So everything about this game has been billed as a heavyweight title fight, and I think there's a lot of interesting matchups, and I think legitimately both teams have a legit argument to win this game.
Yeah, well, let's just get into it. Kyle, I have some concerns about this Bengals team, specifically the injuries. I think if this is a healthy Bengals team, this game feels different. But with all the offensive line injuries, you have a good pass rush for Buffalo. They can rush the passer well. They've been very good at it all season. Now, they lost Von Miller, obviously, in the middle of the season. That hurts. There's no denying that. But Gregory Rousseau's had a very good year. And then I think they can, with Boogie Basham, Shaq Lawson, AJ Espinoza, they can those guys can be the rotational second option there. For Cincinnati, I'm worried about the offensive line situation and the pass rush situation.
Yeah, and it sounds like Epeneza's back too. I think he practiced Monday, so he should be good to go. It's really tough because, I mean, even just going back to Week 17, I was very confident the Bengals were going to win the game. I think this team on the outside is significantly better than Kansas City and Buffalo. I think that's a huge advantage in today's modern NFL. But you also can't be garbage on the offensive line. You can't be, reeling at that spot. And if they're not ready to go, if, we've seen Adeniji out there at right tackle. It's not a pretty sight. If Jonah Williams is also down, that's a huge problem. And Alex Kappa as well. I mean, it just seems very tough to see a roadmap for them to it seems a very tough roadmap to them to find a win here if they're down 3 of their 5 guys.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I also think that the Bills, say what you want about these corners, and they've had definitely a lot of ups and downs. I think a lot of these corners have, but have not had the consistency you would like. But one thing that they do well is they disguise well. They don't make it clear what they're doing right away. They will help out in certain situations. Now, will there be opportunities where you get Jamar Chase one on one? Yes, there will. And it feels like for Cincinnati to win, they're going to have to take advantage of just about all of those opportunities.
Yeah, and that's a big thing because I think I said in here the other day that it was you know, he's on track to become the greatest receiver of all time. So I like him in
Hmm.
any one-on-one scenario.
Sure.
I think it's going to be very fascinating to see how the Bills try and line up against this one because I think one of the things we saw last week with Cincinnati is they got the ball out of Joe Burrow's hands quicker than ever before. A lot of it was a quick passing game, and that's how they try to get the ball downfield. And they had some success doing that against Buffalo in that first quarter of that game before the game was stopped, obviously. So if they're going to try and do that sort of stuff, a lot of it is going to come down to, can these guys on Cincinnati be kind of yak machines that they haven't really been asked to do that because they asked to go downfield, win one-on-one battles on the outside. That's what they're really good at. I think Chase can still do stuff like that, which is why I think one-on-one coverage is a problem because if he catches the ball against one guy and he makes a miss, he's gone.
Right. Yeah. And that's another thing. Yeah, I agree. And I think don't be afraid to take the check down in this spot. And it does feel like for Burrow, it's like you have to limit the sacks in this one. This is something that we've talked about of Burrow. Kind of his one weakness is he takes too many sacks. Probably has to, be more careful of that here. Because I do think that this isn't necessarily the team that you can easily convert on 3rd and 17s on.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. So it's going to be, so if we look back at that game for the little bit that we saw, do you take anything from those first 1.5 possessions each?
I didn't even really look at it too much. For one thing, it's not on the game isn't on NFL Game Pass, so it was hard to go back and check it out too much. But also, I don't know. I mean, a little bit, but it's such a small sample size. It's hard to take too much away from it.
Yeah. I will say the one thing I do remember from that game, from that first bit, was Cincinnati was walking the ball down the field basically.
Hmm.
Up until that point. They went down and scored on their first drive. They were on their way to seemingly scoring on their second drive. And a lot of it was, basically running these guys across the middle on these linebackers that I think is pretty good coverage linebackers for Buffalo. But this is just a different animal when facing the Cincinnati team. Can they hold up blocking enough? Because Lyle Collins was also out that game. He wasn't playing in that game. Now the problem is now the other side is also hampered.
Right.
Can they continue to get these crossing routes developed enough to be able to beat this Bills secondary? Because that part hasn't changed. I don't think this Bills secondary is good. I know they played Skylar Thompson last week. They looked all right at times. I don't think this Bills secondary is good. I don't think that's a good matchup for Buffalo. They're going to try and win this game at the line of scrimmage. Is that going to be possible?
Yeah, well, it's the classic Cincinnati dilemma, right? I mean, this is what we've talked about Cincinnati, I feel like for the past 2 years now, is their offensive line isn't in great shape, but who cares because you have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. But I think this is a tougher hill to climb than they had pretty much any of the playoff games last year other than the Super Bowl.
Yeah. So, and then there's the other side. So we
Hmm.
talked about our concerns for the Bengals. I don't think anyone's really, thrilled with the way the Bills have played the second half of this season, right? Like they
Sure.
came out like buzzsaw. They came out like a buzzsaw to start this year. They look fantastic doing it. I think basically from that little losing streak on, has anyone been thrilled with Buffalo? And there are some concerns on that side of the ball for me too. I think there's some legitimate concerns for them with the way that they take care of the ball. The secondary receivers were good against Miami. Can they continue to be good week in and week out? I think that's always been a question for Buffalo. They've been able to run the ball pretty well the second half of the season. Can that keep up? I do think there are some questions for that side of the ball for Buffalo.
I hear that. The Buffalo, I mean, one thing is, first off, there's no quarterback with a higher variance than Josh Allen in terms of his best game compared to his worst game every year, right? Like
Yeah,
there's no quarterback who's there because his worst game he looks like he'll look like a bad quarterback out there, and his best game I still think is better than anyone else's best game.
yeah. He's the modern Favre. That's
Hmm.
basically what he is. He has the propensity to do something stupid, and he has the propensity to do something that nobody else in the league can do. It's very
Right.
hard to gauge. But he's going against a coverage unit that, it's been impressive this season watching the Bengals because, you know, we were questioning, can this hold up? They had got on a hot run defensively, I thought, last season on the way to the Super Bowl. And you know, they drafted Cam Taylor-Britt, who I think has been all right at that corner spot, but they didn't really add a whole lot to this defense. And you're like, can they do it again? Can they have similar success that they did in the year prior? Um, and they kind of have. They've been a very good coverage unit, I think, throughout most of the season. And that's with Awuzie basically being hurt most of the season, who's their best secondary player.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the Awuzie injury is concerning. I think that's fair to say. I also think that here's a stat, Kyle, I'll throw at you that I think changes the way I view this game. Josh Allen, here's one of the more interesting stats in football, I think. When he's blitzed, his passer rating is 82.1. That's 36th best in football out of like 44 eligible quarterbacks. When he's blitzed, he has not been the offense has not been effective this year. When he's not blitzed, sixth best passer rating in football at 102.5, best PFF grade when he's not blitzed. If you don't blitz him, he torches you apart. That's just been the story of this year in 2022, now 2023. Bengals 22nd in blitz percentage. They don't blitz a ton. And I think that's concerning. The Bengals kind of like to play what they play. And typically the Bills have had no issue. If Josh Allen knows what's happening, he tends to do a pretty good job. Part of why I think he had an issue in Miami was because of some of these different pressures, one of them resulting in a fumble touchdown. I don't know if Cincinnati's going to get those types of plays in this one.
Yeah. Um, I agree with that. And it's a lot of it has to do with that Josh Allen is basically what outside of Mahomes, maybe the most unsackable player in the NFL right now, as
Hmm.
far as court. Yeah, I mean, he just buys so much time. Like a guy's eventually going to get open. Um, it's going to be interesting to see how Lou Anarumo approaches this game and what he wants to do in this setup. Because, like you said, he when he gets pressured, he makes mistakes. We've seen it time and time again. Josh Allen definitely makes mistakes. Can they do enough? Can they create enough pressure to make mistakes? And, can Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson, because they're going to ask those guys to do it a lot on their own, can they do it with four? I think that's a big question.
Yeah, those guys are going to have to come through as well. Again, what I'm typically the pass rush. Don't pay as much attention to it. I think pass rush is huge on both sides because that's another. The Bengals have an advantage there as well. I think they should be able to get pressure as the Bills have a tackle that you can beat, and that's where you want to take advantage.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. So, um, what else do we have to talk about this game? Nothing
Uh,
special teams wise. Save that
yeah,
for the Cowboys.
yeah. Let's pick the game. I'll go first because again, I'm winning by 3 points right now, so it's still anyone's game. I'm going to just put 1 point on this one. I think it's close enough that it could go either way. We have 15 points we have to put on each game. You don't want points. Points are bad. You get the points if you get the game wrong. I am picking the Bills and I'm putting 1 point on it. I have 28-22 Bills. I'm predicting to win.
Um, I'm gonna stick with my pick from week 17. I locked up the Bengals there. I know there's injuries on the offensive line. I still love these guys on the outside. I think they win this battle. Give me the Bengals in this one. I'm gonna go 31-24.
Okay, it's interesting. And are you putting 1 point on it?
2 points. Two
Two
points on the
points. Oh
Bengals.
wow, you're confident.
Let's get it done. Come on, Cincy.
Okay, well that would be a big win for you if you can get it. It's interesting. My thing is, I picked Cincinnati to win a couple weeks ago, but I just think they're injured now. I don't love their injuries, but I didn't really fully realize the difference in Josh Allen blitz versus not blitz. I think those couple things sort of shifted the way I view this game.
Yeah. And, on Bills, I have to say, because I talked about Cincinnati walking the ball down the field in that game for the first two drives, Buffalo did manage to get the ball downfield pretty quickly in that game. But the other part of this game that, I think needs to be talked about is while I think Josh Allen is very good against non blitzing teams, he still has to execute in the red zone. And those guys are going to throw a ton of coverage downfield in the red zone situation, too. Can he not make mistakes in the red zone? I think that's going to be a huge part of this game again.
Yeah, and it is, again, it's scary to pick the Bills when, like, I definitely trust Burrow to protect the football much more than I trust Allen to do it. And like, I don't think the Bills can overcome like a -2 turnover differential in this one.
Yeah, I don't think so either because I think Cincinnati's going to score.
Yeah. So again, should be an awesome game. Very much looking forward to it. I think there's two games that I'm very much looking forward to. Cowboys Niners being the next one, which is a game that, if you asked me a week ago, I would have said, 49ers, they got this one. Now I'm not so sure. I think that the Cowboys could do some nice things in this one. The weird thing about the Cowboys is, like, you look at their like PFF grades this season in a lot of categories, it's not that impressive. Like, a lot of what they've like done player by player isn't that great. I think that their personnel isn't outstanding, but you look at their overall like offensive points per drive, I believe is top 5 in football. They've gotten the results, and maybe that's coaching. Your guy Mike McCarthy, you got to give him credit for it. Going up against the best defense according to points per drive, this is, and just I think with people with eyes can tell that this has been an elite defense against an elite offense. It's good on good here.
Yeah. These are the top two defenses in EPA per play too.
Gotcha.
This is a fascinating matchup looking at these two teams. I agree with you. If you asked me 3 or 4 weeks ago, I'm probably taking the 49ers pretty handedly, but you know, I have been harping on the best version of this Cowboys team can beat anybody. But the problem is that, we saw it last week with Tampa Bay. We saw it in the Minnesota game, and there was another game too. They were awesome. I think the Detroit game too. Like, the best version of this Cowboys team can beat anybody, but we've only seen it like 2 or 3 times this season. The best version of this Cowboys team. Can we get it consistently enough? And can we do it in a very tough environment in San Francisco against a very good defense?
Yeah, it feels like we're going to see a lot more of those, zone buster type plays as the, 49ers love their, like a lot of teams, love their cover 3, cover 4 kind of thing. Though I'll definitely throw some man in, especially on third downs. So I expect kind of Cowboys like to run their zone busters, like to sort of run the ball a lot and then kind of try to get stuff set up about it. I'm expecting a lot of cover 3 because Dallas likes to run the ball. The question that I have is, if you're trying Fred Warner a lot in this game, is that the right strategy?
Yeah. I mean, you're going against probably the best coverage linebacker in the NFL. But Levante David's not that far behind. And I thought they kind of picked him apart too. They picked apart a lot of those guys in that Tampa defense in that game. Specifically their corners too, where I think San Francisco's a little bit weaker as well. So, can they pick apart those guys on the defense? I think it's going to be a very tough ask. But I was just so impressed with the way that it didn't matter what scheme Tampa Bay decided to run last week, they were able to do it. Tampa, we talked about it Sunday night or Monday night. When they ran zone, Dallas had the answer for it. When they ran man, Dallas had the answer for it again. And a lot of it has to do with these tight ends and the way they move these guys around the field. Because I think Ferguson and Schultz are terrific. I think the way they use them is terrific. And can they get these guys in favorable matchups and get them the ball on the outside to win battles too?
Yeah, and much like we saw in that Tampa Bay game, when they do decide to man up against these guys, you have to worry about CeeDee Lamb, and CeeDee Lamb typically in favorable matchups as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and he should have favorable matchups here. Now, we've talked about the matchup with this San Francisco team. San Francisco, it seems like their one weakness is outside receivers. Outside receivers can kind of get going against them, but that's not also CeeDee Lamb's game. So how do you like him? Travarius Lord is going to try and bully him. He's going to try and hit him at the line of scrimmage when he is outside. Is CeeDee Lamb big enough to kind of match that and win some battles, because they do have to be consistent a little bit on the outside. And I do think that they have to go at these San Francisco corners to win this game and move the ball effectively, because it seems like that's the only way to consistently do it against San Francisco.
Yeah. I kind of like San Francisco in that matchup. I kind of do.
Yeah. Ward's been mostly pretty good this season. So, I mean, it's a really tough ask. I do think that's the one weakness for this team, but I don't know if Dallas has the horses to be able to do it.
Right. I think they'll get it done at times. I think that they'll be able to make these plays work at times. I just don't think it'll be anywhere near as consistent as it was last week. Listen, Tampa Bay, they do so many different coverages throughout the year. San Francisco does a lot of this cover 3, cover 4 stuff. They're really good at it. It's when you do something consistently for an entire season, you get very good at knowing how to beat it, what to do. Like, I trust Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner to be able to consistently cover those crossing routes over the middle. I do. Now, I think Dallas will still be able to find ways to get their points. I think they'll find ways to still get stuff open. I just think it'll be a much more, again, it's a consistency thing. I think it'll be a much more even battle this time.
Yeah. And this could be an interesting Michael Gallup game, I think, too, along with those lines too, because if they're going to need a big receiver to get possessions on the outside, if you look at Gallup last game, he had 5 catches, 46 yards and a touchdown, which isn't like amazing or anything like that, but it was on 6 targets, and basically every target he was an automatic first down. And I think they're going to kind of need that consistent pressure on the outside, because that's what's going to open up stuff for CeeDee Lamb over the middle, Dalton Schultz over the middle, Jake Ferguson, those sort of things. They need a guy who at least has San Francisco's attention, it feels like.
Yeah. Another thing I'm curious about, it's something you always have to talk about with San Francisco, is how are you going to protect in this one? How are you going to put yourself in position to where you're not giving up too much pressure, you're not giving up too much, not letting Nick Bosa take this game over. I think that we saw Jason Peters go down in this last game, which meant we saw you have Tyler Smith and Tyron Smith at the tackle position. Should be okay, I think, but it's just interesting.
Yeah, this defensive line for San Francisco is awesome, right?
Right.
I mean, I think we can all agree with that. And I think that what Dallas has done to revamp kind of this offensive line, which kind of got old there, is also very good. So I do think this is kind of a matchup to strengths, because, I have total faith in Zach Martin and Tyron Smith as good football players on that right side of the line. But I also wouldn't be surprised if San Francisco just wins the matchup anyways,
Right.
because I do think that San Francisco defensive line is so good. Peters, I think Peters is still a solid left tackle, and if he's healthy and ready to go, I feel okay about it. But this is just a different animal they're going against, so I do think it's a tough matchup to ask, and a tough matchup to project, because they have to find a way to keep the pressure off Dak Prescott. And when Dak Prescott has a clean pocket, he's going to make a good throw. Can they do it enough? And I think a lot of that's going to come down to this running game.
Yeah. It should be interesting. Also, Tyron Smith's only 32. I would have guessed he was like 37.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's still probably average age to the oldest one, because Jason Peters is 40.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Oldest tackle duo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be interesting again, because we talked about, can Dallas still in essence is kind of a run first football team, right? They do like to put the ball on the ground, use their play action, use their motion to get guys open more than anything. And I think that just worked against Tampa, because they were accounting for that run. And the question beforehand was, can he run on Tampa? And while you watch those Ezekiel Elliott touches and you're like, why is this guy still getting carries? There kind of feels like a method to the madness when you see Ezekiel Elliott just plugging away up the middle, and then all of a sudden, Pollard comes in, and all of a sudden it's off tackle for 12 yards. And you're like, is there a method to this where these Elliott touches have a purpose to catch people's attention, so that Pollard can, if they're wearing these guys down in the middle, Pollard has open space on the outside?
Yeah, it's interesting. San Francisco defends the run very well, but you're right. More about setting stuff up. Should be very fascinating on that side of the ball. And on the other side of the ball, it's once again great versus great, Kyle. I mean, you have, again, the Brock Purdy thing is interesting, but everything else, everyone's giving Kyle Shanahan credit. And, listen, I'll give Kyle Shanahan credit too. That's fun. But also you have to give credit to just, this is Pro Football Focus's #1 ranked receiving corps. I mean, they have 1,000 different weapons that they can work with here. They, pass block very well. This is a team that is loaded offensively. And as long as Purdy just does his job, they've been able to be great against everyone. Obviously, Dallas, bit of a different animal. Let's start with the pass rush situation. I actually think San Francisco should be okay here, because typically when you have really good offensive linemen versus really good defensive linemen, that typically favors the offensive line.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. And I mean, they're going to do, I expect them to do a lot of different things with Micah Parsons in this game, right? Like, they're not just going to run him right at Trent Williams and Mike McGlinchey and just say, okay, go win. Go try and win. I think they're going to stun him. I think they're going to put him in the middle of the field, have him blitz up the middle. I don't think it's going to be a conventional defensive end against left tackle matchup. So how are they going to, scheme Parsons some favorable matchups on the line of scrimmage? I think is going to be a big thing in this game because, I mean, we saw it in that Tampa Bay game. He was kind of a wrecker of that offensive line. There's not a lot of weakness to the San Francisco offensive line, similar to, you could kind of, the weird thing about that game is like you had that Tampa offensive line, which, the left tackle obviously was a problem all season. The left guard was a problem all season. You had a center who was playing 5 months off of a torn ACL, which
Right.
seems impossible. Like that's a different situation than San Francisco's offensive line, which is, I mean, great.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that I wouldn't put Parsons on Williams one-on-one the entire game. Like, as
No.
much as I like Micah Parsons, like Trent Williams, I'm totally in the camp of you put your worst defensive lineman on Trent Williams all game. You accept that that's a loss every play because putting a good defensive lineman on him so you can win 1 or 2 reps throughout the course of the season is just not worth it. I think. I'd be interested in seeing if Mike McGlinchey, if they put Parsons on him and how well that would go.
Yeah. I think that'd be probably the more favorable matchup. Or the
I'm sorry, my dog's barking.
there's a dog. It's all good. But yeah, so I mean, it's going to be fascinating to see the one-on-one there because could they put Lawrence on McGlinchey and try and see if Lawrence can get some matchups and then move Parsons around the field, knowing that, Williams is probably going to have a cakewalk if nobody's on the, on the matchup there. So I think that's going to be an interesting matchup because, I mean, we haven't really seen anybody stop San Francisco consistently this season, right? Like there's been a few bad games and a lot of them, like the Bears game was a monsoon. Like the Broncos game, like Trent Williams was playing basically on one leg.
And that was a bad Jimmy Garoppolo game too.
Yes, it was. And I mean, even since this Purdy thing, we haven't really seen anybody, match up with him. I mean, the one game you could kind of point to is like the New Orleans game, but a lot of that New Orleans game was that just kind of, it felt like San Francisco was coasting. They threw the ball well in that game and Jimmy Garoppolo didn't get hit. There wasn't anything really that New Orleans did to stop them. It just didn't seem like, they stopped the run and that was a big part of it. But I don't know if Dallas is built to do that.
Yeah. The other thing too is, I think the question as well, the concern for Dallas, the biggest concern for Dallas probably is, okay, Dallas likes to mix up a lot of their coverages. They do not do. Dan Quinn has completely done a 180 from what he used to be in Seattle, and you got to give him a lot of credit for, growing. Where he used to be the cover 3 zone, cover 3 zone, cover 3 zone. Now they do everything. There's constantly things that they're doing, but feels like this is going to be a cover 3 zone game, right? They still love their cover 3 zone, and that's kind of the best coverage to defend this San Francisco rushing attack. The issue is that that's where Kyle Shanahan thrives in scheming stuff open. And you can just envision George Kittle getting one of those, plays where he's over the middle with no one 20 yards near him.
Yeah. I think Curse is going to be a big part of this game, right? Like, because if they're going to run that,
all the safeties, yeah.
I mean, because I imagine Hooker's going to play that deep safety role a lot, which is, it's going to be important, but at the same time, Purdy's not stretching the ball down the field a whole lot. So I just think,
I would say though that matters a lot though in terms of the those crossing routes over the middle. I mean, a good example when I made my video, which is not out yet, but against Washington, that deep safety kept screwing up his assignment. Like San Francisco will get anybody on the field to get out of position.
Yeah, that's fair. So, but I mean, so we saw Curse play an awesome game, I thought, against Tampa Bay. I thought he was, effective. I thought he broke up a lot of that stuff, that short passing stuff Tampa wanted to do, because that was basically all Tampa did this season. And, if these crossing routes are going to be, they're going to be a part of the game plan. I'm not going to say if they're part of the game plan. They're going to be part of the game plan, trying to get these guys open over the middle of the field. Curse kind of has to play like a bit of a wrecking ball, I feel like, because, like, I thought Van Der Esch played probably his best game of the season against Tampa Bay. I'm not trusting him consistently against, these receivers and tight ends of San Francisco. I do think that's a bad matchup coverage-wise if you're going to ask Van Der Esch to cover all that ground.
Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting. I do think that the one thing that Dallas has a good job of is their safeties have been very good. And I think that's kind of the one thing is that you're right. Like, yes, Curse is going to have a big day. Kearse is capable of having a big day, and that's maybe the way that you can win this one.
Yeah, and I mean, I love watching Hooker. He's been really fun. He's been really fun to watch this season, and I think that these Cowboys corners, I think, have held up. Diggs still has the propensity to get burnt, but
Yeah,
it's going to be.
we saw
He's gonna,
Ayuk get him badly in the playoff game last year.
yeah, I was going to say he's going to have to have one of his most disciplined games, I think, this season.
Mhm. And he's
But
been much more disciplined this year, I would say, as well.
yeah, I think they're capable of having a big day in the secondary, but I do think like it feels like they're going to have to find a way to make San Francisco one dimensional. But I think San Francisco's fine playing any dimension you want them to play. Like if you try and tie Kyle Shanahan's hands behind his back play calling, he's going to find a way out of it.
Yeah. One interesting thing as well, Kyle, is, I think if you're a Dallas fan, you're saying, hey, Micah Parsons coming to town. We're going to start to get some consistent pressure on Brock Purdy. He hasn't had to deal with that too much. He hasn't had to deal with a Micah Parsons. That's what you're talking yourself into. Brock Purdy, when he's kept clean this season, passer rating of 115.8. That's best in football. When he's pressured, passer rating of 97.1. That's best in football. Who is this Brock Purdy guy?
He is electric right now. I mean, he's played some very good football. We saw a little bit of a sign of weakness, I would say, in that game last
Yep.
the wild card round. There was some mistakes there. And I don't think he can't make those same mistakes in this game because this Dallas team, I think in this Dan Quinn era, has shown that they can capitalize on mistakes. They can take the ball away. They can create turnovers. I don't think he can get away with those same mistakes, but if we go through this, this Brock Purdy sample size this season, if one half is basically our one calling card to, I don't know about this guy, he had one bad half in 7 games this season. That's pretty good for what our expectations were.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing for what our expectations were. The one concern I would have, though, is I feel like every game he's had 1 or 2 bad throws, and it does feel like that's probably Dallas's pathway to victory is you win the turnover battle, which I would predict Dallas wins the turnover battle in this one.
But they've also turned the ball over this season.
True.
They've had no problem doing that,
Mm-hmm.
And part of this thing is Dak Prescott has to be awesome again. Like, it's just that simple. He has to play like a tier 1 quarterback, which was kind of their recipe for Super Bowl success this season anyway, was that Prescott plays at the level of a Stafford last year. Can he do it against his defense? Can he play mistake-free football? It's going to be a tall task. I mean, if he does it again this week, it's going to be very impressive, and it's going to be something we have to talk about.
Yeah. So, interesting stuff. Let's pick the game. I'll go first. I have this as a 21-20 49ers victory. Yeah, I think this is going to be a good game. I think that this could go either way. I am picking the 49ers to win. I'm only putting 1 point on it, obviously, if I only think it's going to be a 1-point game. This feels like I think this is the real game of the week, actually.
I think this is going to be the best game of the week, too. I need to make up some ground on you. Give me 1 point. Cowboys 35-32. Let's make it happen. I mean, I could see either team winning this football game. I was so impressed with what we saw from Dallas last week. Now, the problem is like I said, they haven't done it consistently enough, but let's see the best version of this Cowboys team out in San Francisco. That's going to be a fun game.
Yeah. And Kyle, I know you're not a big uniform matchup guy, but this is best uniform matchup in sports.
Yeah. I mean, so what is it going to be? The Cowboys blue against San Francisco white? Or is it red?
Well, I would assume if it's in San Francisco, I'd assume it'd be the San Francisco red and then the Cowboys white.
Oh yeah, that's true. I had it backwards. Yeah, that's a good one. That is a good one. Is that your number one? Is that your number one uniform matchup? Hall of Fame uniforms?
I think it's got to be right. I think especially like when you factor into history between those two teams too.
Yeah, a Packers 49ers game always has fun uniforms. I will say that.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. I think that I don't know why, but the Patriots Eagles worked for me.
Yeah, that's true. I like the old Patriots uniforms. I don't like the newer ones as much. What about the Jaguars when they had the black and gold helmet? What did that do for you?
Well, that was number one. That one was the that one and the Buccaneers alarm clock. That's the real number one.
Oh God.
I saw a picture of the Buccaneers alarm clock numbers. Like, what were we doing there? What happened there?
Yeah, there's been some questionable uniform calls, I think, over the last 10 years.
Yeah, no questionable uniforms there. Let's move on. 2 games left to talk about. interesting stuff in both of these games. I do have to say, I think either team could pull off the upset. Why don't we go Giants Eagles? Why not? It's the NFC East match. NFC Beast here. Somehow 3 out of the 4 NFC East teams make it to the divisional round, and at least one will make it to the conference championship. 50-50 shot of the conference championship being both NFC East. Very fascinating stuff. Kyle, do the Giants stand a chance? Do the future Super Bowl champion New York Giants stand a chance in this one?
Sure. I think they stand a chance. I mean, we saw last week where it's going to require a Herculean effort again, I think. I think a big part of this is going to be the defense. I think the defense versus Philadelphia's offense is the fascinating matchup for me. The Philadelphia offense, not 100% on the offensive line. We'll see if Lane Johnson's able to go. He's listed as questionable currently. But like what we saw, there's two things Giants love to do. We know who Wink Martindale is, right? He loves to send the house. He loves to, get these defensive linemen at these guys. I think the Giants, if they can create pressure, if they can get to Jalen Hurts, I think that's going to be a huge thing. And then along with that, can these guys cover one-on-one? I thought they did a very good job against Minnesota covering their receivers, which is not an easy task. I thought they did a really good job against Jefferson specifically. Can they do that in this game again? That's what it's going to take. I don't know if they're going to get it 2 weeks in a row, though.
Yeah. Joe, our resident Giants fan in the chat, says, super chat. We appreciate that, Joe, saying we're going to lose, but by 1 score. So Joe, very optimistic.
Yeah, I guess so. Lose by 1 score, that would be a huge success. I don't know. I mean, do you see this Giants team being able to slow down Philadelphia's offense?
The thing about the Giants is every single metric I trust about what makes a team good, the Giants are bad at. Every single one. The Giants have not succeeded in any of these metrics whatsoever, except for the win column. So I don't know what to make of this Giants team. The Giants are weird, and I typically would just say this is an exception to the rule. Football is a fluky sport. If you can cut down on the mistakes, if you can just play smart football, if you're a well-coached team, you can find ways to win on the edges, and you can beat mediocre teams, but it's going to be hard to beat a great team like that. That's how I typically view this stuff. I think that's how I view it here. One notable thing is that, the Eagles, Jalen Hurts is someone who, when he's blitzed, his numbers go down. He's not one of these guys where second best passer rating in football when he is not blitzed, but he's 22nd when he is blitzed. The issue is that then you have to put man coverage on A.J. Brown, and A.J. Brown's one of the best receivers in football against man coverage. So that's the factor is he's just someone who he wins one-on-one. So then do you double A.J. Brown, leaving Devonta Smith one-on-one? Well, Smith had a big day the last time they played. He obviously had that 4th down, long touchdown play. So I don't love that. I think, Giants love the blitz, right? They're a big blitzing team. They blitz almost as much as anybody in football. The question I have is who is going to cover A.J. Brown? Who is going to cover Devonta Smith? They were not successful at it last time at all. And I don't know what's going to happen there. So I don't see how the Giants are able to hold the Philadelphia Eagles to it feels like the Eagles are going to have a good offensive day.
It feels like it, definitely, because I do think one of the things we could take away from that Giants game, they blitzed, they got after them, and I thought they still did a very good job against Jefferson, which was impressive. The other guys had pretty good days. T.J. Hawkinson was awesome in that game. Adam Thielen had a couple big plays, and that was a big part of the Vikings offense. Now, they didn't convert and finish drives all that much, and the Giants were able to move the ball on the other side because that Minnesota defense is ass. But at the same time, I think that was a huge part of it was you look at this Philadelphia team, and I think part of the reason while it still goes down a little bit, I think Jalen Hurts has been better against the blitz this season. And a lot of that, I think, has to do with Devontae Smith got better this season. A.J. Brown's on the team. Dallas Goedert's gotten better. It's all helped the Philadelphia offense kind of work this A.J. Brown trade, which was kind of the biggest trade of the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, they're the 1 seed, and they're not the 1 seed without A.J. Brown. I mean, he's completely changed this team. And the flip side, too, is I don't know if I trust this Giants team to stop the run very well in this one. Mm-hmm. And the Eagles like to run the ball. So I don't think they'll be able to stop the pass or the run. It feels like, I don't know, maybe the best hope for the Giants right now, I think going into this game defensively, is to hope Jalen Hurts is hurt. Hope that Jalen Hurts isn't Jalen Hurts.
Yeah. If he's not 100%, obviously that's still a problem, but I mean, it wasn't his best game, but I thought he was fine in that, that week 18 game. There wasn't a whole lot to take away from that. Giants didn't play guys. I don't think the Eagles cared that much. They went up by 10 and basically said, or 16, and basically said, we got the 1 seed, we're fine.
Mhm.
They just wanted the reps. And yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to, neither one of these are really awesome run defenses. I think EPA per play has uh, Philadelphia 23rd against the run, and New York Giants are 30th. Both of these teams like to run the ball and use their quarterbacks in the running game. Can they find success? I don't know if that's going to happen. I just think this read option is really tough to beat. And this Giants team is about rushing the passer. They're going to be able to read option around this, I feel like, all the time.
Yeah. I do have to say, though, that's maybe the one thing I'm looking at for this. Again, Eagles offensive line, very good. Not easy to get pressure on. But, I mean, we've seen Lawrence and Thibodeau generate pressure throughout the course of the season. That's maybe the one thing that you look at for this Giants defense and say, well, there's a way, could Thibodeau maybe get a key strip sack fumble in this situation and you get the fumble recovery? That might be, like we saw against Washington, that might be a way you can flip this game.
Yeah. It's going to have to be. They're going to have to figure something. I think this is going to be a big clock, time of possession game. If they can, stop this if they can slow down this Eagles running game enough and, kind of control the tempo, control the clock, and, they're going to be able to run the ball on Philadelphia, we think, is that's probably the pathway to the Giants' victory. I just think it's going to be very difficult for them to find stops in this one.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Giants running the ball because I don't think they're going to be as good at running the ball. I mean, you look at the last time they played, the Eagles are weird because their overall EPA rush metrics are terrible, but like if PFF has them ranked as the 14th rated run defense, I feel like, and that's when I watched the tape, I feel like it's like, this doesn't look like a bad run defense to me. The numbers are the numbers. You can't deny that. They haven't performed well, but I think they're a little better than that would suggest. And I also think that, you look at the last time they played, Saquon Barkley had 9 carries for 28 yards, 3.1 yards per carry. When I'm saying last time they played, I'm referring to the week 15 matchup, not the week 18, because that was, week 18 was basically a preseason game. But, the last time they played with both teams trying to win, they did not run the ball effectively. I think that, the Evan Neal trying to block, whichever, like Hassan Reddick or, Brandon Graham, whoever it ends up being, that concerns me. That concerns me a lot. Just in general, I think that there's a massive advantage with this Philadelphia defensive line and this improved, but still not spectacular Giants offensive line.
Yeah. And Josh Sweat, I guess, is healthy. So that's a huge thing, too. Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a fascinating matchup on that spot because, I mean, the Giants, they did a good job of limiting Barkley in that one, but like New York still kind of ended up with 5 yards to carry. And it was a pretty balanced
Tyrod Taylor
approach.
had 2 carries for 40 yards. I mean, that helps.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, it was a little bit of a weird game because it was a little more balanced of approach for New York, too. And probably a lot of that was playing down most of that game, which is probably why, they can't fall behind big in this one, right? Because that's where Philadelphia wants to be. As soon as they're ahead, they're going to suck the life out of the game with their running game. And then you have to throw on the secondary, which might be the best in the league. It's not a recipe for success. That's part of the big thing where the Eagles got off to that crazy start. They were so good in the first half of game, specifically the second quarter. The second you fall behind this team, you're done. Because they're going to run the ball. They're impossible to stop in this running game, and the secondary is too good to throw on.
Yeah, it's like a python, right? It's like you can't let him get a too tight grip, or it's going to be over. But I don't want to just completely count the Giants totally out of it. Daniel Jones played very good last week, and I think that that's maybe the key for Daniel Jones is he won't have quite the rushing attempts abilities that he did last week, but there will be some. The Eagles like to play a lot of 2 safety deep coverages, so that's probably part of why the stats aren't as good stopping the run. But maybe they will bring a safety in and you can throw over the top. Isaiah Hodgins has played very well as of late. Darius Slay is a contributor. There are ways that they can win it. I think Daniel Jones is going to have to go off for them to do it.
It definitely feels that way. And you could argue since that game, he's played his best football, right? Like basically to end the season after that Philadelphia game, make sure I'm doing this right. Yes. After that Philadelphia game, he had a 70% completion percentage, 671 yards, 3 touchdowns, only 1 interception, 2 rushing touchdowns in that span over those last 3 games. And then he was very good against Minnesota too in the playoff game, obviously. So you could argue that Jones has played his best football since that Philadelphia game, but part of that too, I think, is the defenses he's played have been Minnesota twice, Indianapolis, and Washington, which is a solid defense, but not a spectacular defense, I think. So can he do it in this game against a defense that is going to be healthy now, motivated, and ready to kind of go at him?
Hey, big game Jones.
Is that what it is? Is
Yep.
that what we're calling him now?
Yep, I think that's I don't know. It's like big game Daniel just doesn't work. That's just not good.
No, it is not. But yeah, I mean, you hit it on the head with this one. The big problem is that they were able to kind of disguise Evan Neal a little bit in the last game, and part of that was Minnesota's secondary was so bad guys were open. Like Hassan Reddick should have a field day in this one. Whoever they want to match up on Evan Neal or on that right side of the offensive line should be able to get after Jones and make him move and make things, difficult.
Yeah, and listen, I like Evan Neal as a prospect. I don't deny that he can have an Andrew Thomas type trajectory, but he's just not there right yet.
No, this is a very tough spot for him to be in.
Yeah. So we're picking the games now. Kyle, I'm going all in on this Eagles team. I've been high on this Eagles team. It's really not a negative Giants take that much. Like, I think the Giants, listen, I was wrong about the Giants. The Giants have by far and away surpassed my expectations. They could keep doing it. Who knows? I'm picking the Eagles to win 29-18. I'm putting 11 points on the Eagles to win. If I lose this season because the Giants and Daniel Jones upset the Eagles, I can live with that.
Yeah. That's probably fair. That's where I'm at too. I got 7 points on the Eagles and I got 28-20.
Okay. 28-20. But you're giving them you're saying one score.
Yeah, why not? This Giants team has had some magic to it. Let's see if they can I wouldn't be shocked if they keep it interesting, but I still have the Eagles covering too. So I got 28-20. I do think the Eagles get out to a big lead, kind of slow the game down. I think the Giants could make it interesting, but I just don't think there's going to be enough to come back on the secondary.
Yeah. Joe in the chat says I can live with that too. I guess Joe hoping that this tanks my season. Although it wouldn't be as bad because you put 7 points on the Eagles as well. But yeah, I mean, this is the one thing I have to say, Kyle, this is so irrational, but it does worry me is the Giants' history of knocking off 1 seeds. Is just, as a complete underdog, it's too much to ignore.
It shouldn't matter, but it does. Nobody on this team is from that, those Giants teams, but it does matter because it is the Giants. We've seen this before.
Right, exactly. And, you could argue the same thing with the last matchup. The Jaguars have a history of knocking off 1 seeds as well, or pulling off upsets in the divisional round as well. Going to have to be quite the upset going up against Kansas City. To me, it feels like I'm not sure which side you want to start with it. Let's start with the Chiefs going up against the Jaguars. The Chiefs offense going up against the Jaguars defense. Chiefs offensively, played very well last time these two teams played. Patrick Mahomes really had a great day in this one. I expect Mahomes to have another good day. I think smart money is on Kansas City having a good offensive day.
Yeah. This Jaguars defense is better than has been in the past, which wasn't hard because this wasn't a good defense. But that being said, the big thing with this Jaguars team is that, we've seen them go up against now Tennessee in week 18 and who do they play? Oh, Los Angeles, and have a lot of success against the run. This is a pretty good run defense. The secondary is solid. I like some of those guys on the outside, but this is a tall task to go against Patrick Mahomes on the road and try and shut down this passing game for Kansas City. That does feel like a matchup problem to me.
Yeah, a lot of so it's interesting. So last time they mostly played zone coverage. They played in week 10. So, again, Jaguars, I think, very different team than they are now. But, Jacksonville played a lot of zone in that matchup, and Kansas City had no real issue. You had some clever Andy Reid designs in that one, getting guys open, but you expect more clever Andy Reid designs, especially coming off a bye week, right? Typically does not lose in these situations. I'm interested in seeing what Jacksonville does to kind of counter it. I think they'll probably try to play a lot more man. It worked a little better last time, but not much. I mean, you still have to deal with Mahomes scrambling. You have to deal with, obviously, you have to find a way to cover Travis Kelce in that spot. So, it just, they're a tough team to play against. I mean, this Kansas City offense is obviously awesome.
Yeah, and the big thing is that they have found ways to beat zone defense. That was the biggest problem is, the deep coverage zones the last year, teams were daring them to throw the ball short. Kansas City is now cool throwing the ball short, and a lot of that is the receiver makeup that they've added to this team. You can question, obviously, the Tyreek Hill trade, which, it sounded like the contract situation. He wanted a contract. Kansas City, obviously, with some of the contracts they have on the books, couldn't do it. But that being said, I think there was questions heading into the season about this Kansas City receiving core. I think they've mostly been answered, and I think we feel pretty good about this Kansas City offense in their ability to use these receivers effectively. And while it's not, I would say, you probably wouldn't rank this as a top 15 receiving cores. They can perform like it because of the way they have this zone set up and the way they can attack it.
Well, who does rank them as a top 15 receiving core is our favorite website, Pro Football Focus. They have them as a third-ranked receiving core this season. Now, again, I'm assuming a lot of that has to do with Travis Kelce and how much he brings to the table. But,
Right.
Again, you have guys who have come through and just been solid role players for them. Juju Smith-Schuster, McCall Hardman, Sky Moore, and Marquez Valdes-Scantling have all done some nice things for this team. Even Kadarius Toney. Toney had a big day the last time these two teams played. So obviously it helps when you have Andy Reid scheming him open and Mahomes throwing to him.
Yeah, so that's a big. I was more talking about, like, if you rank personnel, you're probably not looking at this personnel and saying, "Oh, top 15 receivers." But they performed like it, and like you said, they performed like a top 3 level. Kadarius Toney is the most interesting player in this game to me.
Most interesting player in the world.
He might be. So he had 4 catches and 57 yards and a touchdown in the game against Jacksonville on 5 targets. This just feels like the guy that's going to cause problems for Jacksonville's defense. I do think there's some defenses that, if you could play him a little more physical, can give him some issues, but it just feels like, man, this guy can kind of get rolling against this team, right? And there's 2 guys on the same Kansas City offense, like, beyond Kelce. Kelce's awesome. You think Kelce's going to get his numbers. I think the big thing against this, and the 2 guys that also gave him trouble in that game were Kansas City, another team that kind of walked the ball down the field against this Jacksonville defense. I think there's 2 guys that are really going to give him issues and gave him a ton of issues in that game. That's Kadarius Toney, who had 80, I'm doing quick math here, looked like 90 total yards of offense in that game and a touchdown. And Jerick McKinnon, his speed out of the backfield, catching the ball, that feels like a matchup nightmare for Jacksonville.
Yeah. Definitely. One other interesting factor in all of this, I know it's because, every podcast they have to bring up Trayvon Walker, but I do think it's worth mentioning in this one that just schematically, Jacksonville has, I feel like, done a lot of stunts with Trayvon Walker, because that's kind of what he was able to do in college effectively, was kind of run these sort of non-traditional ways to get to the quarterback. I think if they do, they tried that in this game a few times, and every single time Mahomes just immediately went to the outside and had the containment was given up. So it's like, you kind of can't do that in this game, I don't think.
No, you have to. I mean, it's Mahomes, so it's like, what do you do exactly?
Right.
It really seems like they used Trayvon Walker as a guy to move the line of scrimmage back. Like, they basically just say, run into these guys as hard as you can, push this line of scrimmage back and make life difficult, and make life easier for Josh Allen and these other guys to win their battles because the line of scrimmage is caved in. It really seems like that's Trayvon Walker's whole deployment. Is that worth a number 1 pick? I don't know.
Right.
That's the big thing. But, Patrick Mahomes is incredibly difficult to sack. He's one of the best players off script. He's one of the best players in the world at buying time in the pocket or scrambling or doing these different things, chasing around. He gets these defensive linemen exhausted. If you were to pick a couple of players that like Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen are kind of the athletes you want to be able to track down Mahomes and give him some trouble, they just didn't do it in the last game at all.
Yeah, and one thing I have to say is Walker actually had an okay game the last time these two teams played. It was one of his better games. One day played, so that's maybe the hope, is that he could come through here. You're right, like that feels like it's a good matchup. It is funny, Trayvon Walker, literally basically every pass rush snap is just him trying to bull rush, and every now and then it works because he can pull it off because the guy's not strong enough to keep up with him, and then it usually doesn't, and that's just what he does every time. It's very fun.
Yeah. And part of the thing too with that Hill trade is that they were able to kind of revamp this offensive line where, you know, this is a very good offensive line for Kansas City. There's not a lot of guys on this group that you look at and he's just going to be able to run through.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I expect Kansas City to score a lot in this one, but can Jacksonville keep up with them? Might be the. I mean, I guess the one thing last thing I have to say about the Chiefs offense, we've seen Mahomes have some bad days before. We've seen Mahomes have bad days in the playoffs before. I mean, I would argue both of his Super Bowls he had subpar days, and then the conference championship against Cincinnati. Listen, if you're a quarterback in the NFL playing in a lot of big games, you're going to eventually have some bad ones. That's just the nature of the sport. But if maybe you could get one of those Mahomes 2 turnover days type thing happening, that might be the one key to success.
Yeah. I feel like we've talked a lot about turnover luck when it comes to these underdogs, and it is going to be a big thing, but
Mm-hmm.
it just it's just hard to imagine a lot of mistakes against this Jaguars defense, right? Like I do think if it turns into Kansas City Cincinnati in the AFC Championship game, that's a defense that I think can force him into some mistakes. I don't know if this Jaguars defense is the kind of defense that's going to be able to do that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if so either. But again, they got some players who can do some things. So it's.
Yes.
I think that if he does make the mistakes, I think they can capitalize. I'll say that.
Yeah, I mean, they got some nice players. I like, Olakun. I like Devin Lloyd in the linebacker spot, even though a rookie against Mahomes seems like a tough matchup. I like Campbell and Cisco in the secondary. I like Jenkins in the secondary. They're going to have to come up with some big plays.
Yeah. It should be interesting to see what they do there. The flip side, again, can the Jaguars keep up? Now, one thing I think Jacksonville should do, and I think they will do, they didn't do this as much last time. I think they're going to run the ball and stick with the running game. Now, again, game kind of got out of hand last time, so they felt like they had to abandon it. I think limiting possessions is crucial here. And, Kansas City likes to play. They've been playing their cover 2 before it was cool, right? They do it a little bit differently than the average team. They like to do a lot of cover 2 man with a lot of blitzes thrown in, but still, they like to have those two safeties deep a decent amount. This could be a Travis Etienne day. Now, he didn't have a crazy stat line last time, 4.1 yards per carry on 11 carries, but still feels like run the ball, let Travis Etienne do a lot of the work, throw a lot of screen passes, and when and snap the ball with 5 seconds left every time.
Yeah. You're going to have to find a way to control the tempo of this game and control the clock. And that's probably going to involve running the ball a lot. But it's going to be interesting because this Kansas City defense is objectively not awesome at times this year, right? Like it's not a great defense. It's an okay defense. And I think they find ways to, hide the guys who are not very good. But I think, when you're talking about running screen passes, I mean, Chris Jones and Carlos Dunlap are very good at reading that stuff. They're very good at breaking up screen passes. And I think that's a huge part of why their defense can find some success. I think they're going to have to win against the secondary because I do think that's still the weakest part of this Kansas City team is their secondary and these outside corners. Like, can these Jacksonville receivers who were good in the second half against that Chargers, they were bad in the first half, they're good in the second half against the Chargers secondary. Can they win against Trent McDuffie and L'Jarius Sneed?
Yeah, well, it have to be like a Marvin Jones day where, he had a catch for 33 yards the last time they played. He's kind of probably their best outside receiver, I would think. Like Christian Kirk, a lot of good stuff. I don't know if I love him in go routes on the outside. And that's kind of, why a lot of people didn't love that contract was because he's sort of he's kind of a bit limited in that sense, but he's so good at the other stuff that, he's lived up to the contract so far. But like, would this have to be a Marvin Jones game or maybe even Zay Jones?
Yeah. Zay Jones had a very good game against Los Angeles, especially the second half. He's very good at getting the outside. I mean, even a guy like, they move Evan Ingram's a receiver, They move Evan Ingram outside as a receiver, and he's got the kind of size and body that could, I think, especially like I think he could go at a guy like Trent McDuffie and give him some problems, right? Like, I think that's kind of the roadmap is they have to be able to have some guys beat these Kansas City corners. And I do think they have a couple guys, even if they're not a tier 1 player.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so as well. Also, what's interesting is, again, you look at the PFF grades from that game, when they played, top 3 highest grades, Nick Bolton, Leo Chanel, Willie Gay Jr., 3 linebackers. Linebackers played very well. A lot of what Doug Peterson likes to do is take advantage of linebackers, get linebackers out of position, did not work well last time. So they'll have to figure something else out, perhaps. Which, like you said, might be a lot of outside routes.
Yeah, and I do like these linebackers for Kansas City too. And anyways, I think
Mhm.
that's probably Willie Gay has turned into a pretty good player after that draft pick. He's an incredible athlete. Bolton is a key part of this defense. I just think this Kansas City team's too good up the middle. Like that's the one thing I think this Kansas City defense is solid at is right up the middle. I don't
Mhm.
think that's something you can kind of just beat. I think they're beatable on the outside and on the edges.
Yeah, and that's really where Jacksonville likes to play, is in up the middle, right? Like that's kind of their
Mhm.
style. Is they like to keep things in between the numbers, which Kansas City is better there.
Well, they just don't have the skill and talent on the outside. Maybe next year with Calvin Ridley, they change some of this up. They're able
Right.
to do more things, but they don't have, and like you said, as good as as Ingram has played to his contract standards and Kirk has played to his contract standards, they're not guys who are going to go win one-on-one battles all the time.
Right. Yeah. I completely agree. That being said, I still put up some points in this one. Like I don't. Spoiler alert. I'm picking Kansas City to win. I'm putting 1 point on it. That's all I have left. But or wait, do I have? I think I did my math. No, I'm putting 2 points on it. But I'm picking the Chiefs to win this one. My final score is 36-24. I think it'll be a relatively high possession game. That's part of it, but also I think that I think Kansas City is going to have a really easy day to score. But I think Jacksonville could do some nice things and at least make it competitive for 3 quarters.
Yeah. I'm putting 5 points on Kansas City. I ironically had 27-17 written down as my score just to realize that that was the score of the last game.
Oh,
So, I'll just stick with it. Let's go. Kansas City
sure.
27-17, 5 points on the game. That should be 15, right? Like
Yeah,
12,
I
13,
did.
15.
Was doing the math right where you were talking. Yeah, we're both
Yeah.
good.
All right. So that's what I got for that one. I just think it's too much to ask this Jacksonville defense to slow down Kansas City.
Yeah, Kyle, you said last podcast you think the Giants have a better chance to upset the Eagles than the Jaguars have a chance to upset the Chiefs. Although now you switched it, you put more points on the Eagles to win. What has changed within the past 2 days?
Just looking a little bit more on the matchups, I just think I I really just think that if Philadelphia can get into a position they can run the ball and be comfortable with it, I just think it's really tough to ask New York to make that happen. I do think the matchup's slightly better for Philadelphia, even though I do still kind of like this matchup for Kansas City too.
Yeah. So if we're ranking the likelihood of an upset happening, are we going? I guess are we both probably going Dallas one? Or I guess we differ completely disagree on a couple of these. Where would you go? So I would go the probability of an upset happening. I think I'm going Dallas 1, Cincinnati 2, Jacksonville 3, and the Giants 4. What do you think has a higher likelihood of being upset? Do you think the Cowboys winning or the Bengals winning has a higher chance of happening?
Bengals winning. I do think there's an argument that the Bengals are a better team still. I know the offensive line is not great, but that being said, I do think I do think that there is a but higher likelihood of an upset for the Bengals to win that game.
I like this comment in the chat. Kyle flip flopping, sad exclamation point. Of like, yeah, it's good because of an offhanded comment we said 2 days ago that now you've taken more time and said, actually, I think I slightly go the other way.
Yeah. No one's allowed to change their mind,
No,
No one ever. We all have to be Skip Bayless and still say LeBron isn't clutch.
and still say Tim Tebow is great.
Yeah. Tim Tebow just waiting for his chance.
Well, this is the second straight podcast where we've made a Skip Bayless, Tim Tebow, and LeBron reference.
I mean, it's funny listening to him talk, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, very excited for this week. For anyone listening, I'm gonna have film studies previewing all of the games coming out. Already a couple are out on this channel. Going to be coming out today and tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. Kyle, let them know they can find us on Twitter before we head out.
Yeah, make sure to follow us on Twitter. That is at Jackson Kruger. Make sure to follow me at by Kyle Gronin, and make sure to follow the account page that's at On the Sideline JK. That is at On the Sideline JK.
Yes, of course. If you like to listen to your podcast, the audio only feed is available. It's On the Sideline podcast. So anywhere you get your podcast, that should be available. Yeah, should be interesting. Oh, one last thing is that podcast on Sunday. We're moving it up in hours now, 11 Eastern, just because the games end a little earlier. So we're going to try to get it out a little earlier. So it will still be live, just an hour earlier. So be on the lookout for that. Yeah, Kyle. That's our show.
Yeah. Divisional match round is going to be awesome. You know, it should be I think there's going to be two awesome games. Maybe, hopefully, we get a third awesome game. That's my hope.
Yeah. So if you're Team Kyle, you're rooting for a Giants upset. That would be huge for you.
Yeah, because that'd be a 4 point swing, basically, right?
Well, I guess it's a little bit interesting because I would get 11 points, you would get 7 points if you can. But then if you miss like if also the Jaguars were to win, then it wouldn't really matter too much.
Yeah,
So you want a Chiefs win and a Giants win.
right.
Hmm.
And a Bengals and Cowboys winning wouldn't hurt me either.
Yeah. It should be interesting. It always seems to come down to the Super Bowl, anyways, though.
Yeah, that's always the biggest one. I would,
Mhm.
maybe this year I'll have a chance to actually pick it. That'd be nice.
Right. That's been the issue is I keep picking it and I'm amazing at picking it. I'm just so good.
Yeah, that's your specialty for sure.
Apparently, yeah. It's certainly not the divisional round after what happened last year. Hopefully, I think we'll get one right this week. I think we got at least one right.
Yeah, that is definitely the case. I mean, we can't be that bad again, right? I mean, if one of us is going to have a better week than the other by default because we had two
uh-huh.
different game picks.
Right. Yeah. So by default, we have at least two games correct.
Yeah. So hopefully it's me.
Yeah. Hopefully it's not. We'll see what happens. But again, yeah. I guess any final thoughts, Kyle?
Uh, no, I think that's just about everything.
Kyle, I did it. I have to say, my last thought. I finally did it. I did a mock draft. I did a Buccaneers mock draft. It's that time of the year.
Did you draft a quarterback?
No, I drafted, but I don't know any of these guys too. I'm just trying to familiar. So I drafted I believe a guard.
A guard. Yeah, that makes sense. You
Mm-hmm.
don't love Luke Gadecki or whatever his name is?
Was not great. Nick Leverett was okay, and then he got hurt. So then, I don't know. We're in a tough spot.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see how these next few months go for the draft stuff. We'll get to all of that. Obviously, it's still a long way to go, but yeah, I've done a few mock drafts myself this offseason already. Uh, Patriots need some help.
Yeah, should be interesting. I'm definitely looking forward to draft season, but more looking forward to the playoffs and how that goes. Definitely make sure you're subscribed and everything to miss all the good stuff we're doing here. Again, thank you to everybody for watching live, watching after the fact, or listening after the fact. We appreciate all of you. And until next time, see you later, alligator.
Peace.